Hi everybody, I'm Jim. Welcome to the channel. Today I want to do a short video review, a reaction to a novel I just completed, Amor Towles, The Lincoln Highway, by the author of A Gentleman in Moscow and Rules of Civility. This was a bestseller, came out a few years ago. As I've said on other videos, I really didn't know anything about Amor Towles. I got interested in him, like watching someone on BookTube, and thought it might be something interesting. And I gave it a shot. I read it. This was bestseller literary fiction, is how I would classify it. And I have to say, I really liked the book. I enjoyed the read. It was a fun journey. So I just want to give you some quick takes on it, and without spoiling too much. So I can't summarize a whole lot of the plot because that would, I think, destroy the fun of reading it. It's very much a page turner, easy to read. Towles has a sort of direct style. He's good at setting a scene. It's not overly ornate writing. It's pretty matter of fact, but he writes some good sentences. You know, he's not a crude writer by any stretch. I'm going to read you a short passage towards the end of the book, to give you a little bit of a flavor for how his prose sounds. But this is very much plot-driven fiction, but it's also character-driven fiction. It's let me just tell you sort of what the premise is. It's a kind of a historical novel. It's set in the mid 1950s in America, and it's about it's told from multiple points of view. So he'll tell you at the head of a chapter who's speaking. There are 4 primary points of view shared. There's actually more than that, but the 4 characters who are most prominent are Emmett. He's basically like the protagonist. He's a teenager, and his brother, Billy, and then 2 other characters, Duchess, who's actually a boy, another young man, and Duchess is his nickname, and Wooly, another nickname. They're like sidekicks. And the premise is that Emmett was at like a juvenile detention work camp in Salina, Kansas, and he's gotten out because his father has died and the farm's being foreclosed, and he's going to take care of his little brother Billy. So they kind of let him out. The warden drives him up there. And then, so the beginning of the novel is sort of about all that happening, and you're getting introduced to the characters. And then the big plot twist is hiding in the trunk were Duchess and Wooly, who have now escaped the juvenile detention camp. And they become a key part of the plot. So the idea is, the initial premise is that the goal of Emmett and his little brother Billy, they're going to drive to San Francisco, see if they can find their mother, who has basically ran off years ago. And she left some breadcrumbs by sending postcards to the house, but those have been hidden, and they just, by the father, now his father's gone, so they discover these postcards, and they have some breadcrumbs, but basically Emmett has sort of a plan, which I won't go into detail, of how he can make some money. He's got some money saved up, and they have a car, a Studebaker, and they're going to take this road trip along the Lincoln Highway. And let me show you a map of that. So the Lincoln Highway is the first transcontinental highway, named after Abraham Lincoln. It starts in New York City, right in the heart of Manhattan, right at Times Square, actually. and runs all the way out to San Francisco. This is what got me interested in the book in the first place, because the Lincoln Highway comes not far from where I live, and it was always like a major highway in my own life history, because it went out to Western Pennsylvania, where my family was from on both sides, and we would be on Route 30 a lot. We would be right on Route 30, Lincoln Highway, Lancaster Avenue, goes by many names. We would always be on Route 30. It's part of the main line in the sort of western suburbs of Philadelphia, and I grew up not too far from there. And so, I was curious to see what role the Lincoln Highway would play. So initially, that's the plan, is to go out west. The interesting kind of direction that Amor Towles takes this is they never go out west. They actually end up going east. I will give away a couple plot points here, and then I swear I'm not going to give much else away. But basically, those two stowaways who have got out of the trunk, and they've been hiding like in the barn on the farm, and they reintroduced themselves to Emmett. They want to go east to New York City, where they're from, that area, and there's some money that Woolley has coming to him that's like stowed away or stored in a safe at this like Adirondack camp, like it could come from some money. And so they're going to go on a quest to get this share of money that he has coming due to him, was his grandfather's money. And so they want to go east. So they all they all kind of get in the Studebaker, and they're going to go east. And then he's going to give some of the money to Emmett. Then Emmett and Billy, his brother, can head back out west to San Francisco. So you take like a wrong turn, you're going in the wrong direction. But that's where he takes it. And most of the novel takes place in and around New York City, and up there in that Adirondack house. So that was a little bit of a surprise, but it is a road novel. It's a picaresque novel. They come across a big cast of characters, and I'll give one more plot point away. Early in the book is where, for one reason or another, Duchess, who's basically like the antagonist of the book, like he's not entirely a bad character, but he causes a lot of problems. I'll put it that way. He and Woolley, they basically steal the Studebaker and go off on their own, heading to New York, and apparently with the intention of giving the car back, but they don't have any time to waste. And then that forces Emmett and his brother Billy, who's a kind of a cool little kid, he's sort of nerdy, a book nerd, and precocious, and but kind of smart, a little bit of a know-it-all, but like innocently, and they are forced to like hop freight trains to get to New York City. They know where these guys are headed, so they're going to try to catch them. And of course, a lot of these characters intersect one another as the plot rolls along. That's about all I want to give away in terms of the plot. But it does keep you moving, and Amor Towles is very good at constructing these chapters to land on a beat. So you end the chapter, you want to turn the page to start the next chapter. He kind of leaves you like, okay, something really happens at the end of the chapter that then makes you want to keep reading. Definition of a page turner, right? So it's a bit of a historical novel. It's a bit of a picaresque novel. They come across a motley crew of characters. I'm not going to go into all the different characters they come across. They come and go and come back and leave again. And along the way in this journey, this road trip, this train trip, you learn more about the characters. So he feeds you their backstory. One of the important elements of exposition is to explain, like, how did these characters end up in a juvenile detention camp to begin with, and there's different stories there. The book is filled with stories, filled with anecdotes. I would call Amor Towles a yarn spinner. You know, he keeps kind of like leading from one story to another story, and they're fun to read. The characters are quirky. There's up until the last, I'd say, quarter of the book, last 20% of the book, it's kind of like a little more on the innocent side, and things are kind of like, you know, I wouldn't say light, because, you know, serious things have happened to these characters and they've been through a lot, but just the way it's handled, like nothing like totally horrible happens. But then, like, the last 20% of the book, some darker things happen. I won't give them away, but that kind of, I sensed a little bit of a tonal shift towards the end, which was fine. You know, you got to end the book, you got to bring it to some kind of closure, and the suspense has to lead somewhere. So you're, you know, road novel, picaresque novel, suspense, page turning, some good characterization, easy to read. It's a fun trip. It's a fun trip. I liked it. And I think he left you at the end of the book, and again, I won't give away the ending. It definitely has an ending, like there's closure. But I also think he left himself a little bit of room for a sequel if he wanted to write a sequel. I don't know if that's part of his plans or not, but you could continue the journey. Like, I'll just put it that way. What else do I want to say about Amor Towles? He reminds that I was trying to find sort of like analogs, you know, like, well, what is this writer like? If you want to try to make up your mind as to whether to read him or not, you know, and this is where I come up against my own shortcomings. I don't read enough contemporary fiction, alas. I'm trying to read a little more contemporary stuff these days, so I have a basis for comparing writers, but I am way behind on that. But, you know, and this is not the best comparison, but it's the best I can do for now, is he reminds me a little bit of John Irving, but they're very different writers. Like, John Irving has different interests. I don't think John Irving would write a road novel like this. He wouldn't want to, or he might not be able to. But to the extent that they're both popular fiction writers, they like to spin yarns, like that, you know, they're expansive that way. I think Towles writes with more economy than John Irving does, but they're both easy to read, popular fiction writers. So if you like John Irving, you might like Amor Towles, but again, that's not the best comparison. There's probably half a dozen other writers who fit what he does better. I just don't know them. So, mea culpa. But yeah, I enjoyed the read. I was satisfied when I got to the end of it. And let me give you a little bit of the sound of Amor Towles' prose. This is one passage towards the end, and I'm not even going to tell you who's narrating this. Remember, there's different perspectives for different chapters, some of which are narrated in the first person, some are in the third person, limited point of view. But here's one section that, one of the rare passages, I would say, that kind of talks a little bit about theme. It's not the only theme in the book, but it just kind of gives you a sense of how he sounds. Okay, that's a page or two. Let's go. Again, I'm not going to tell you who this is, talking. The journey from Morgan to New York took 20 hours spread over the course of a day and a half. To some, that may seem like an onerous bit of driving, but I don't believe that I'd had 20 hours of uninterrupted time to think in my entire life. And what I found myself thinking on, naturally enough, I suppose, was the mystery of our will to move. So that's kind of the theme of this passage, the mystery of our will to move. Every bit of evidence would suggest that the will to be moving is as old as mankind. Take the people in the Old Testament. They were always on the move. First it's Adam and Eve moving out of Eden. Then it's Cain, condemned to be a restless wanderer. Noah, drifting on the waters of the flood. And Moses, leading the Israelites out of Egypt toward the promised land. Some of these figures were out of the Lord's favor, and some of them were in it, but all of them were on the move. And as far as the New Testament goes, our Lord Jesus Christ was what they call a peripatetic, someone who's always going from place to place, whether on foot, on the back of a donkey, or on the wings of angels. I would just add that, that's something people say about Americans a lot, is like we move around a lot. We're always on the move. And that's kind of going on in this book. But the proof of the will to move is hardly limited to the pages of the good book. Any child of 10 can tell you that getting up and going is topic number 1 in the record of man's endeavors. Take that big red book that Billy is always lugging around. This is a book it's really, really kind of a cool part of the novel where, he's read this book like 25 times and he kind of has a lot of it memorized, and it's about heroes and about historical leaders, but also mythological heroes. Anyway, it comes up a lot. It's got 26 stories in it that have come down through the ages, and almost every one of them is about some man going somewhere. Napoleon leading off on his conquest, or King Arthur in search of the Holy Grail. Some of the men in the book are figures from history and some from fancy, but whether real or imagined, almost every one of them is on his way to someplace different from where he started. So, if the will to move is as old as mankind, and every child can tell you so, what happens to a man like my father? What switch is flicked in the hallway of his mind that takes the God-given will for motion and transforms it into the will for staying put? It isn't due to a loss of vigor, for the transformation doesn't come when men like my father are growing old and infirm. It comes when they are hale, hearty, and at the peak of their vitality. If you ask them what brought about the change, they will cloak it in the language of virtue. They will tell you that the American dream is to settle down, raise a family, and make an honest living. They'll speak with pride of their ties to the community through the church and the Rotary and the Chamber of Commerce and all other manner of stay-puttery. But maybe, I was thinking as I was driving over the Hudson River, just maybe the will to stay put stems not from just maybe the will to stay put stems not from a man's virtues, but from his vices. After all, aren't gluttony, sloth, and greed all about staying put? Don't they amount to sitting deep in a chair where you can eat more, idle more, and want more? In a way, pride and envy are about staying put too. For just as pride is founded on what you've built up around you, envy is founded on what your neighbor has built across the street. A man's home may be his castle, but the moat, it seems to me, is just as good at keeping people in as it is at keeping people out. I do believe that the good Lord has a mission for each and every one of us, a mission that is forgiving of our weaknesses, tailored to our strengths, and designed with only us in mind. But maybe he doesn't come knocking on our door and present it to us all frosted like a cake. Maybe, just maybe, what he requires of us, what he expects of us, what he hopes for us, is that like his only begotten Son, we will go out into the world and find it for ourselves. And that's a little bit of a reflective, ruminative passage, one of the rare ones in the book. Most of the book is plot and dialogue, and well-paced. These characters are, one of the themes is sort of like the search for the parent, or, kind of coming to terms with your family history, and some of the darker corners of that. That's part of the book too. Settling scores is another thing that comes up, or accepting, taking punishment for mistakes that you've made. These are sort of things that keep looping around throughout the Lincoln Highway by Amor Towles. I liked it. Didn't know what to expect. Sometimes that's the best way to go into a book. I just took a chance on it. Got this at a book sale, and glad I read it. And I would keep my eye out for these other two books by him. Will I keep this book? Probably not. I think, space is limited here in the mansion, and I think I will probably donate this to a little free library and keep my eye out for the other books that he's written. We'll just pass it on. I'll keep it for a little while, but it's not the kind of book I probably would need to reread. You read these kinds of books partly just to see what happens, and once you know what happens, I don't know how it would bear up to a second read, but I'm not saying it was a superficial book. Some books, one time is enough. You enjoyed it and you have fond memories of reading it, but you don't need to read it again. But anyway, that is the Lincoln Highway. I was a little sad that he sort of skipped over Pennsylvania in terms of like the local color of like traveling on the Lincoln Highway. You get little snippets of the Lincoln Highway, mostly in the Midwest, but then also in like New York and New Jersey. But I thought it was a good read. Anyway, have you read this book or this author? Are you interested in him? Let me know what you think in the comments. You can always send me an email. The email address is in the show description. Anytime you want to email me is fine too. And yeah, happy with this read. Happy that I finished it. I've been struggling to get through books late in the last few weeks, but I feel like I'm now beginning to like get my footing again. I'm finding my groove. So we'll keep going. This one helped me to get out of my rut. So anyway, thank you, Amor Towles, and thank you for watching.